trade wars, markets up and down. What did you learn in the last month?
Not much, other than we have all this uncertainty. Some preceded the new administration, like we had large deficits, interest rates going up, inflation going up, and some are, tariffs and things. And of course, the geopolitical situation is very tense, very difficult, and hard to resolve.
Okay, so if you forget projections, numbers, what's your hunch? Is the U.S. going to go into recession or not?
Look, I'm going to defer to economists who give it about a 50% chance. I think all these things are probably inflationary a little bit more and slowing down the economy. If there's a recession, I don't know how big it'll be or how long it'll last. Hopefully we'll avoid it, but I wouldn't take it off the table at this point.
If you look at the trade war and then the somewhat reconciliation between the U.S. and China, does it hold?
I think it's the right thing to do is to back off of some of that stuff. To have an engaging conversation. I'm grateful they did the U.S.-UK deal. It's an agreement in principle, so, there's a lot of uncertainty still, and there's a lot of uncertainty still in the China thing, but at least we started. It obviously calms down the markets. That's not the reason to do it, but the markets, do vote or something like that, and so you'll still have uncertainty to resolve. There's 90-day triggers in a lot of these things, and hopefully they will be resolved. But they're complex. I don't expect immediate resolution, to the satisfaction of everybody in 90 days.
But do you expect markets to settle from here because we have a little bit more of a blueprint, or could volatility pick back up at any second?
Markets are quite unpredictable. I think there's a lot of uncertainty out there that you can't discount. War in Ukraine, terror in the Middle East, Iran. Huge deficits, our tax bill, which I would like to see a good tax bill pass. The tariffs, the reaction of countries to tariffs. The EU and the UK are about to negotiate, and I think they have a chance to actually develop a great relationship, partially making up for, the disaster that Brexit became. And so, yeah, those are uncertainties. You can't eliminate them because you want to.
But what are your biggest clients saying about this market volatility? Have they made money on the back of it?
Yeah, some do and some don't, and volatility could be good or bad depending on who's facing it. So, but I would expect continued volatility. I think it's a mistake to think we can go through all the things we're going through and the volatility itself will calm down.
Has it been good for JPMorgan? What's your trading revenue looking like?
Yes, because when there's volatility, this is a very simplistic way to look at it. Spreads gap out and traders make more money if there's more volume. So we had both this time, more volatility, more volume. But very often when you have a lot of volatility and spreads gap out, there's much less volume. So you've seen examples where there's good volatility and there's bad volatility. This one happened to be good. The next go around may not be so good.
Jamie, when it comes to financials, I mean, a lot of, non-bank entrants are making quite a lot of way. Citadel, Jane Street. Is that a concern for the banks? Should it be a problem for the banks?
I wouldn't call it a problem. They're both clients and very capable. But I've always had the view there are a lot of competitors out there, and all the major banks are back. I think that's a good thing for the world. Maybe not so much for JPMorgan. You mentioned those two. There's Apollo. There's a lot of fintechs, some very good ones. There's Stripe. There's PayPal. Yeah, my view has always been the same. I tell the management team, assume competition. Assume they're coming at you in every angle. Assume they often have their own strengths, sometimes their own weaknesses. They won't all do great, but yeah, I think some of these people are gaining quite a bit of share in parts of their business. We still are too, by the way. So, we're in the fight. We're not losing out very much, but that doesn't mean you won't lose out tomorrow because you're winning today. So
what do you have to do today? How do you see the people that are doing, well today doing even better tomorrow?
Are you talking about us or other people?
Both.
It's quality people. You interviewed Pranav. We have exceptional people in investment banking and sales and trading. And I put right next to that technology, but it's related because those people deploying technology. So there are thousands of technology projects, and then there are hundreds of AI projects, all of which are meant to do a better job for customers, consumer, research, how we deliver things to people. And if you don't move, you're going to be left behind. I remind you could be a country or a company, you do not have a divine right to success. We mentioned this management learning thing I did. You can see it on YouTube and all that. But I point out to people, look at the bank, look at Nokia, BlackBerry, Sears, Kmart, Bear Stearns, Lehman. I can chapter up the verse of failed companies, usually because they're complacent, arrogant. They think they're, on the top of the world, and they're not. There are competitors coming everywhere, and you should assume that's going to be true.
Do you see competitors coming for the U.S.?
Yeah.
Where, Europe?
Oh, you're talking about the countries?
The countries, yeah.
Yeah, I think Europe, let me just say this. I think Keir Starmer, Merz, and Macron, I think Macron is one of the best political leaders on the planet today, okay? I think Keir Starmer is smart, devoted. They're saying the right things public and privately. All of them talk about growing the economies, thank God, pro-business, pro-capital, and they're doing all that to improve the lot of their citizens. It's not about what they're doing for JPMorgan. And if I was Europe, absolutely, I'd want to greatly live in the UK, military, economic, and I would reform as best I can all of European things, what they're all talking about now, deregulation, simplification, and yeah, they try to compete with America, and that would be good for America. That doesn't make me sad, it makes me happy that they're strong. And then, they're allies. I want our allies to be strong and powerful militarily and economically.
But do you worry about U.S. supremacy, actually? Exceptionalism?
Yeah, I never believe we're quite that exceptional. I mean, remember, America's an unbelievable country with freedoms and the gifts of God and water, food, energy, and then the gifts of the founding fathers called freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of enterprise. Those dwarf everything. And so we still have the most prosperous economy the world's ever seen, but the Americans shouldn't take it as a divine right to sex either. We've slowed ourselves down with regulation, stupid bureaucracy. We haven't done budgets in years, so we shouldn't assume it's forever. I don't think we'll still be preeminent, militarily and economically for a long time, but if we don't do everything right, we could lose that too, 20, 30, 40 years from now. And I think very important to that is America. The goal of America should be to help the military alliances of the Western world and to help the economic alliances of the Western world to walk side by side like you did in Victory in Europe Day the other day here, to strengthen the Western world and hold it together, not to cause it to fragment. And so I think we have to work hard to make sure that's the case.
Do you worry about the deficits, and do you worry actually in the U.S., and do you worry also about the U.S. dollar remaining as a reserve currency? Do you think Europe has what it takes to try and put the euro in there?
Yeah, so I should have mentioned deficits up front as being one of the issues you have to deal with. And I think asset prices are quite high too, and those create various risks for America. Our deficit is almost $2 trillion, 6 or 7% of GDP, the largest peacetime deficit ever, and we have 100% debt to GDP. That 100% debt to GDP is kind of universal, almost around Europe on average, but your deficits are much smaller. Does that create a risk? Absolutely. It creates a risk of inflation to me. It creates a risk of higher long-term rates. But America, will the dollar get weak? I don't know. That's a slightly different thing. I think you could see rates go up, the long bond rates go up, and that might slow down the growth, and that's how we kind of a stagflation kind of scenario.
What do you tell? You must see President Trump regularly. What do you tell? What would you tell him?
I talked to all of the folks there. I wrote about my chairman's letter. First of all, America should worry about things we can do better. I call it blue tape. We are out of control. We're doing the same stuff that they did here that, virtually, the American public may not know, the GDP per person in Europe has gone from something like 90% of Americans to 65%. And they did it to themselves. Rules, regulations, overcomplication. They started the European Union, which I think is a huge accomplishment of mankind. They got to finish it. And here they call it the Capital Markets Union, the Banking Union. They have to create a big common market of 450 million people. And so in America, it's the same thing. It's regulations, it's permitting. We've wasted a lot of money in the green economy. It's getting jobs back. It's training in schools. It's fixing immigration. So we've stopped at the border, but now we have to have a more merit-based immigration, more seasonal immigration. Things that can help the country grow. And then we have to work on our military alliances, on our economic alliances, and that's for the sake of the future free and democratic world.
But so on the economic alliances, is there a concern that actually certain countries in Europe or elsewhere will choose non-U.S. bank for bond issuances, will choose non-U.S. asset managers to manage their pensions?
Yeah, there'll be a little of that. We irritate a lot of people. So I run into them. They say, like they're not buying our, Kentucky bourbon or something like that. There'll be some of that, and I think it's perfectly reasonable for. I spoke to a lot of investors here. They're thinking about their asset allocation to the United States. Will they diminish that? Possibly. Is America a bad investment destination? No. If you were to take all of your money and put it in one country, it would still be America. I mean, it's still the most prosperous nation on the planet. It's got the best military on the planet. It's got huge amounts of innovation. People are catching up. That's a good thing. You know, China's doing some very good innovation in medical and AI, and we should assume they're going to continue to do that. But America's still got the best. Our GDP per person is $85,000. You know, China's $15,000. We don't have anything to be ashamed about. We should fix our problems because we could grow a lot faster, which help all of our citizens.
But if you put out too many tariffs and actually too much uncertainty, does that not squander actually a lot of the assets that the U.S. has?
A little bit. I mean, I think they're doing the right thing now, which is to back off of it. Let the Secretary of Treasury do the hard work of figuring out what's the right thing to do. If there are unfair trade things, do something about it. But they have backed off of specific things in specific industries, and I think that's the right thing to do. I think the first thing was very large, kind of that everything, everywhere, all at once, and now they're, kind of backing to where I think they should be.
In terms
but even at this level, it causes that kind of uncertainty. Even at this level, you see people holding back on investment and thinking through what they want to do. Thinking about how much you're going to put in the United States, and I mean we're going to be okay, but it is causing that uncertainty.
We were looking at the president, of course, in the Middle East, where there were deals that were signed, and a lot of Wall Street, some of your competitors there. What's your strategy for the Middle East? How much do you want to grow there?
Well, we grow everywhere. I mean, we go country by country, and we look at, we bank countries, cities, schools, states, hospitals, big companies everywhere. We have a network effect. So when we bank Bloomberg, we're banking in the United States, we're banking you in London, we're in Paris, we're banking you in Europe, we're banking you in the Middle East. That's what we do. So almost every one of those countries, we're growing. As they grow, we grow. We cover, more of their institutions. Overseas, we're institutional. In the United States, we also have consumer. And so, as you know, we're testing consumer in Chase UK.
Yeah, and you're growing, actually, that retail business a lot in the UK. What's next for that?
We hope to grow it more in the UK, add some products, and eventually we've already announced we're going to go to Germany. But I think we have a chance to build a great digital bank, and we have competitive advantages. Yep. We have a brand, we have research, we have a balance sheet, we've got capabilities. We're going to add, we're not going to announce it today, we're going to add more capabilities over time, and then someone like you, if you travel to the United States and to the UK, you're going to be able to move your money between Chase US and Chase UK on your phone. So we're going to add things that make your life better as a consumer of our banking product.
You certainly caused some waves in talking about return to the office. I think there might have been a little bit swearing.
I emoted a little bit,
in there, or not? Have people listened?
Yeah.
Has your staff come back full time?
Listen, first of all, I did emote there. I emote, people know me, and I don't really care about that. I don't worry about it. But I want to answer the guy asked a legitimate question. And I gave it a very detailed answer about why it doesn't work for young people, why it doesn't work for management, why it doesn't work for innovation. I completely applaud your right to not to want to go to the office every day. But you're not going to tell JPMorgan what to do. And I think we already have 10% of jobs at home. I'm not against work from home. I'm against work from home that doesn't work. And then, of course, the press made a big deal about the petition and all that. It was like not even a mosquito.
Okay.
Most people are back. Some people, we've had no additional attrition. We had to make some modifications. We didn't have enough seats in certain areas, and we'll be a better company. And I think our employees will be happier over time. And the younger people learn the right way. It's an apprenticeship system, and you can't learn working from your basement.